So welcome to this, super sparkly workshop, SEO with Soul. Erica came up with the title with me, and I do think that there is that sort of part of us that wants to understand what SEO is, but it feels like it's really boring, or we can't do it, or maybe an expert, we need to employ an expert or something. So Erica and I have chatted about it a couple of times, and it's always been at the bottom of my list. The only thing that I've done with my Substack is attach it to Google Console. And I know I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I absolutely don't. But I did do that step because someone said it was a good thing to do. So I've done that step. So I could definitely talk people through what I did and share the notes from an article in terms of where I found that. But other than that,
Yeah.
I have no clue, if people could find my work from Google. I see in the statistics that some people do, especially for Sparkle on Substack, which is great, but I don't know what I'm doing to enable that. I don't know how that's all working and if I can do more. So this was really to lean into that and to lean into like, what are the words and how specific do I need to be? How do I make sure I attract my right people? How do I make sure that I keep my authenticity and tone of voice and all that sort of stuff? So yeah, that was where the history of it all came from. So if you're watching live or on replay, I'm learning as well as you guys, and it's such a joy to welcome Erica. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It was actually funny for me. I was thinking about it as I was preparing for the call. For someone who knows or claims to know nothing about SEO, you do it like quite well,
Oh, good.
like just by chance, which is something that I find really cool about SEO. But before I go and absolutely like riff on that, I'll kind of explain what SEO is, because to be honest, no one's getting horny for SEO except for me, apparently. But like, it isn't really something that people take the time to understand. And I think that that comes from the mystery of it all. It sounds so much harder than what it is at a really base level, which is why I think you've been able to do it so well, because a good SEO is essentially just good service, like communicating your service really well. And I think that you do that so well, especially with Sparkle. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. Essentially, all that means is when someone types into Google directly your Substack, for example, that it would pop up. I couldn't actually find any conclusive information on what Substack does in the back end to make sure that Google finds you, essentially. I'm trying not to use all the big, nerdy, boring words, because honestly, it isn't necessarily like applicable for Substack. Like, there are some things that you can do, but it's actually really kind of Substack. They've done a lot of the hard stuff for you. What I can gather is there's a particular part where basically you submit what you write to Google so that Google goes, oh, hey, that's a cool, nice thing that you've written. I'm going to help people find you. And there was an article that I read, but it wasn't from Substack, where it explained that once you hit a certain amount of subscribers or a certain amount of posts, then Substack starts doing that automatically for you, which is why, for example, your stuff is showing up when you've never purposefully popped it over there. Another really cool thing that I found was that it doesn't matter if your stuff is paid or unpaid, Google will still have a look. So you're not like paywalling Google to be able to put you in the right place, if that makes sense, which I thought was amazing, to be honest, because otherwise you would lose half of your content. So obviously I could talk about this for 10 billion hours, but the main crux of SEO and how it relates to Substack is Substack does a lot of the hard, what they call technical or like back-end SEO, where it's like the coding, making sure that Google knows where you are. All you need to do is meet Substack halfway. The way that you do that, there are like two core things that I would say you need to start with. The first one is something that they call topic clusters, and the second one is something they call backlinks. And it's just really cool how this all works into Substack, but I want to start with topic clusters first because, oh my God, I'm about to get so excited about this, because they're like a relatively new way of making Google happy with you. Before, when people would talk about SEOs, like back in, I don't know, the early 2000s or whatever, they were like, keywords are the way to do things. And then everybody started doing this thing that they call keyword stuffing, which is basically like you shove those keywords anywhere you can. You're putting them on like the metadata, which is basically where you're labeling your images. You're like shoving them in all these little cracks. And then at about 2013, Google went, hey, I see what you guys are doing, you little sneakies, and starts flagging that sort of stuff now. So I don't want you to leave this, go into Google Key Planner and start shoving that in your stuff, because not only will you lose your authentic tone, it doesn't work anymore. It's not how Google recognizes things, and Google is so clever. It's why all the important and smart people go there to work. Like, it knows what it's doing. It will see around the keyword stuffing. So don't start doing that, which is where topic clusters come in. And oh my God, I love them. I feel like it was such a game changer to me to learn it, not just from an SEO perspective, but from a writer's block perspective. So the way that a topic cluster works is basically you start, oh yeah, if you have any questions, please just like throw them at me. The way that a topic cluster works is essentially it's exactly what it sounds like. I always see it as like little circles, like an ecosystem that kind of has like webs coming off it. So if we think about Sparkle on Substack, for example, a key topic that people would be Googling would be like, how do I start a Substack? What is Substack? How to get recognized on Substack? How do I find my voice as an author, right? Like you can kind of see, or as a writer, you can see like these topics start to like naturally emerge. Understanding a topic cluster is essentially understanding what your people are Googling. And that for any business is your bread and butter anyway. Like if you don't know what your people are looking for, you essentially don't know who you're writing for. And while I think all of us kind of go through like these phases of Substack, like you first get on and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. It's like the Substack high. And you just write anything. You're just like, this is amazing. Have every thought I've ever had. Have that thought remixed. Like you just like throw everything out. And for a lot of us, we're putting out musings, which is chill. I think musings can be really beautiful. Is it Sarah Faye who's like, don't?
Yeah, just no musings, just like no musings in your title, no musings in your bio, no musings. We're not here to muse now. Obviously I have an
Yeah.
alternative to that, because for me, it's about deepening your creative practice, and musings are a way in to deepen your creative practice and to get really clear and separate out, okay, what am I doing for business, as in the business of my newsletter, the paid subscriptions, and then what follows from that if the people want to plug into your business, and then what am I doing for me, what feels good to me. And when I've seen people like explore musings and then get stuck, it's because they're bored of their own musings, right? So then they just needed the next level of what they wanted their Substack to be about. So I do think there is mileage in musings, just to sort of, flip that open.
So what I wanted to say was like, I feel like musings are kind of in phase one, where the writing is really, really about you. I don't think our writing ever stops being about us. Like I have done different studies and have certificates in art therapy. Like I think it's bloody incredible what writing can do for us personally. But if it was just personal writing, we would all leave it in our journals, right? Like that's just the truth. So I feel like that phase one of getting to know Substack, letting Substack get to know you, and you're just kind of like churning out things. Some of them might be musings, some of them might be like throwaway things, some might be things that you look back in a year and you're cringing about, right? Like that first phase, I feel like it's tricky to be SEO specific in that when you have no idea who or what you're writing for. For me personally, that's not the phase to worry about it. Like you can do little bits and pieces for that phase. That's like making sure if you upload a photo, it's the size that Substack recommends the photo to be. Because something that SEOs hate is like really high, what's that called? Like where it's like a really high quality image,
Yeah, the
essentially.
high
That's like,
definition.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so when you put your photo in and it's the right size, like say if we're using Unsplash or whatever, that's fine, or our own photos, and then it gives us some options to like write a caption and some alt text. Should we be filling those boxes in?
Yes, but not with, don't keyword stuff. Like for example, for you, don't have a photo of like a flower and be like, how to write on Substack helping, don't do that. Be like, what I would do and what I do on websites that I design is like describe the photo. So for example, if it's like blue flower on Sparkle on Substack, right? So you're still linking it into where it is. Or like on the article called this on Substack, right? So you're not ending up like being inaccurate, so that not only does SEO not like it, but if you are using it, or someone who needs, I have no idea what that photo is now. So, because there's two different sections when you're like naming it, there's like an alt text example, and then there's the metadata. So either way, wherever you're putting it, just make sure that it's accurate for exactly where it is. And not keyword stuffing if you can get away with it. So yeah, that first phase isn't where you really go ham with your SEO. Second phase is, so after you've been through kind of like your musing phase and you're like, yeah, exactly. So in the comments, someone just said alt text is there so blind people can see what the photo is. And that's what I meant. You don't want to like keyword stuff that alt text, so someone who actually needs to use it never finds out what's there. So yeah, in that second phase, once you've done your musing, once you've actually gotten in the habit of being consistent on Substack, because that's another thing that will help SEO is consistency. Once you've actually learned how to write a decent length article that isn't like, that doesn't drop off in the middle or any of those things, right? You're skill building in that first phase that's actually relevant to your writing. Second phase is where you've got a bit of skill, you've got a bit of consistency, and hopefully you've naturally built a bit of a network. Because at the start, when I mentioned there's topic classes, there's backlinks. Backlinks are essentially when someone has linked your Substack, one of your articles, anything that kind of links to your Substack somewhere else. So as much as possible, you want to be putting those links like in your social media, on your website, as much as possible. If you're getting interviewed on podcasts, if you're getting, interviewed on other forums like Medium, you want to be getting your Substack linked. Every time you get an email, link it at the bottom. Like if you're using something other than Substack, right? You want to put that link in as many like reputable places as possible. Because basically Google's like this weird little popularity contest where Google's fairly large. Like everyone being like, hey, that place is actually kind of legit. I've talked about it. This person's talked about it. And it's why from an SEO marketing perspective, all press article, right? Like you want as many places as possible to have that link. So for example, I'm sure you do it anyway, in like show notes and on your YouTube for like Sparkle, you would be putting that link in there, which essentially is like building it up. So when you have a really beautiful network on Substack, where I feel like you're on Substack, like everyone is very friendly, genuinely. Obviously, there are dark pockets of Substack that we never talk about, but people are friendly and beautiful and connective. And being able to link articles and talk about it, where your inspiration comes, and other writers, like that's your SEO, to essentially create this little web of backlinks. It also means if you run your own like author website outside of Stack. So for example, like I'm an author and a writer, so I have an author website where I link each of my Substack articles as I write them on my website to help boost that SEO, right? Because my site is already built in that way. It also
just on
means,
that,
yeah,
Erica, so on the website, and one
Mhm.
thing that I get a lot in client conversations and I don't know the answer to is if your website also has a blog function. People have said don't repeat something, don't take a Substack article and paste it into your blog or vice versa. Like Google won't like that. But what you're saying it's okay to do is you can intro it and put the link. So say if the blog post was, here's 5 things I've written over on Substack in the last month. They're about X, Y, and Z. And that was like brand new, fresh copy. That would be okay in a blog or like in a website page. That would be nice.
Yep, 100%. Definitely don't just like copy and paste it and try to, I don't know, start 5 other websites that say the same thing. Google, it's just so clever. It just doesn't like that type of, but yeah, definitely there's a couple of different ways to do it. I've got summaries on some of them of like, this is what I spoke about. Some of them I just put like the introduction where it wouldn't, be too intense to have the same text. But having a blog post like that on the website that's like my Substack post for February or whatever, and having those links there, like it's really going to build that really beautiful relationship. And in turn as well, if you're linking your website on your Substack, then it's going to like boost that up together. So it's a nice little ecosystem that kind of feeds each other. So that's the basis of backlinks. It's so much easier than what it sounds like if you Google backlinks. It does mean though that we really do have to lean on like traditional networking. Like you do have to still make connections. You can't just like do technical SEO and kind of hope for the best. Like you do have to make connections with other people, which is kind of why we're here as humans. So it shouldn't be that bad to have to do those things. It's why collaborating on Substack is really powerful for like boosting that type of thing. But that's what I would really focus on, is like the backlinks and the topic clusters. So backlinks, I feel like if you can get to know who your competitors are, and I know as writers, sometimes that can be really heartbreaking because you're like, oh, I don't write like that. They have this many more subscribers or whatever, or they have got this tick and I don't have it or whatever. Getting to know people who are in your lane so that you can collaborate and boost each other's posts and be good for each other essentially, as well as make a beautiful connection and serve whatever it is that you're here to serve. Like those are really beautiful steps to take to be able to start building those links, as well as naturally will get you exposure and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I feel like where I've got to this year is I've really started to understand the depth of connection of repeating myself. So, you know, when it was like you would go to someone's website and it'd be like, here's their Pinterest, here's their Instagram, here's their Facebook group, all the things. There was all the things, and it's like, which place do I want to follow or connect with this person on? But now the other side on, because I'm focused on Substack, and then I do a little bit on Instagram just to sort of keep that connection with people that like to use it, especially on the visual side. And then a little bit on LinkedIn, I can see that the longevity of like a podcast episode, for example, there can be a lot of places where I can boost my SEO. So I just put a podcast out, but only on YouTube, and then it'll come out on Substack on Sunday, and it's already had like X number of views. You can see that. And then I've put it on LinkedIn as well. And I've shifted from thinking, oh, Claire, like you're just repeating yourself all over the internet, to being like, this is strategic stuff that I need to do because lots of people access that content in lots of different ways. And it's not like I've made it up. I've lent into what feels good and what I've got capacity for. But I think any take that you've got on helping us to better understand like how to keep some of our content evergreen and to keep that kind of connection with the other platforms and people on the other platforms that will then share our work would be amazing. I know Amber's on the call. So Amber writes an incredible Substack called The Warrior Within, and she is holistically healing from migraine. She's on an amazing journey, and I'm so fascinated with our writer, and we're friends in real life too. So big up Amber fan club. You know, Amber focuses a lot on LinkedIn and the connections there, and she's just done an incredible collaboration on Substack that again just took us on this much deeper journey. You know, the conversation was like really rich and like lots there. So thinking about that conversation and also Amber's Substack, if we've got a big collaboration coming up and we've like planned for it, how do we make the most of it and know that we've done enough? You know, how do you switch off? Like, how do I not think to myself, right, on Sunday, I should also send an Instagram post out and do like some talking stories? How do we not burn out with it all, Erica? Because it feels a lot sometimes.
Yeah. For me personally, the trick to not burning out is also the trick to burning out. So for me, I'm like, YouTube, for example, is a search engine. Pinterest, for example, is a search engine. LinkedIn is a social media. So LinkedIn would have I don't know LinkedIn personally, but like off the top of my head, the stat, but the life span of your content would be relatively short compared to something like Substack, which is a blog form. So it's 2 years that SEO wise, your blog would still be relevant and showing up. Pinterest, it's 4 months. I think YouTube is quite similar to Pinterest. Sometimes it can be anywhere between 4 months to 2 years as well. Like using those strategic placements of your content is what I think prevents the burnout. So for example, if you guys were doing a collaboration, right? If you think about breaking down the collaboration into bite-sized pieces. So let's say, okay, I'll use like this interview, for example, as what I would break it down. So the first, I don't know, like 15 minutes, for example, you could take 5 different queries that people would put into like Google and find them in that first 15 minutes. And so like from that, I would be essentially, I would use Pinterest. I would be making like pins that ask those questions that take people here. Or I would be taking those first like 15 minutes and transcribing them and posting them on Substack, or just like slightly rewording them. So to me, the thing of like not burning out is allowing our content to genuinely be evergreen and take bite-sized pieces and allow them to satiate people for their like hunger for different pieces of knowledge. In saying that, we often, like, as we go on our journey, like, you would know that the first question you asked when you joined Substack, for example, isn't now the questions that you're asking yourself. Remembering those first questions, I think, allows for breathing space. Like, remembering that not everyone has been here for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know how old Substack is. But like, remembering that you can reuse and repurpose that content in like 4 or 5 different ways on 4 or 5 different platforms. It's like you don't have to come up with a new idea every week necessarily. You just need to figure out a new way to ask that question. And I feel like that helps prevent burnout, and also helps prevent I'll explain topic clusters again, of course. So I think that helps prevent burnout in that way. And for me personally, like, I feel like when we're so used to places that are social medias that are literally, the algorithm is designed to keep you on the app. So it's like the algorithm is designed for attention, whereas SEOs are designed for answers. So it's like competing for people's attention is always evolving, always developing. There are always new trends. It feels like you're on this like hamster wheel that you can never catch up to, essentially, to keep that attention for long enough. Whereas when you're going to answers, it's like, there are always going to be those questions. There's always going to be someone who's like Googling how to make a good blueberry muffin recipe, and someone's going to be popping up at the start, So I think when we shift from how do I capture these people's attention, and we allow social media to actually thrive in what it is, which is a networking tool, not necessarily like a digital marketing tool, even though it can function as one, but like the algorithm really favors you genuinely being social on there and giving attention and giving appreciation, compared to like bringing your strategy for answer giving where it will thrive in places that are more SEO geared. Does that make sense before I answer this question about topic clusters?
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think on the topic clusters, I know that writing is nuanced, and Sparkle on Substack is Substack education. So if we took Creatively Conscious as an example for topic clusters, I write about, and you'll love this, wholehearted living and self-seeding your business. Now, no one is searching for those things on Google. I know that, and it's the next bit that I don't know. So the topic clusters bit, I feel like I could have like an educated guess. Okay, like what type of things, so burnt out creatives are like some of my main clients, or people who are in corporate but want more creative expression. So I could try and like have a think about how that is manifesting in Google, and try and link it back to my content through topic clusters, I think. But that's the piece about not losing authenticity, isn't it? And finding our right people.
Yeah. So hitting that sweet spot of allowing your titles, so it would be coded in like the back end as a H1 or a H2 heading, is essentially what they call it. So it's like your big writing. Actually, you would have seen when you're formatting your Substacks, like there are all these different ways that you can put that heading size in your Substack. So making sure that you use the, like, I was about to say basic bitch way of like saying the question that you're essentially answering, these very like spiritual, more nuanced kind of like language ways in those H1, H2 headings will help you hit people who are Googling those questions while still keeping your authentic language. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
So
I think, and I am, I'm just laughing at myself because I am ridiculous. So I sort of feel like I knew about H1, H2, all the things headings from WordPress, but on Substack, I just like the aesthetic of heading 4. So I use heading 4 for everything. Is that wrong? Is that
it's
bad?
not wrong. It's not wrong or bad. It's
I
just
don't use
not.
heading 1 to 3. I didn't like the size of them or something. Just heading 4 for everything.
Look, it's relatable. Like I love a good aesthetic. But from an optimized kind of strategy point of view, like using your H1, H2 for those questions, and making them as simple as possible. Like I don't know about you guys, but I've never really typed a very long-winded question into Google, right? Like you know that when people are going to a search engine like that, the question's quite small, it's quite direct, and it's quite symptom orientated. So even people who are musing, like I don't know what type of people you have, or like what range of people and their journey on Substack you have in here. So people who are musing, like they're still writing for entertainment, right? So if you kind of like, if you're at the start of your journey and you're like, well, I'm just writing for entertainment, I'm just writing for someone to read it. Then coming back and being like, okay, well, what community aspect am I giving people who read my writing? So when I think about myself, for example, like in the identity that I hold, I'm a queer woman who's a mum. I have a non-binary partner. I live in Bali. I've traveled in a caravan. Like there are all these like little communities that I belong to that if I was just writing for entertainment, I would be like, okay, so let's say I'm writing for the mum who's on the road with her toddler, and I go, don't worry about the Nullarbor, which is like the longest road in Australia. It's like 13 hours long. Don't even worry about it. We invented the Nullarbor ferry. It's where you give your kid a present every time they get a little bit unsettled. It worked amazing. Best 13 hours of my son's life. Like, and if I was telling the story of crossing the Nullarbor with him, that's still a story. It's still entertainment, but I would be like, answering the question of what do I do with my toddler going across the Nullarbor? I'm still providing value. I'm still answering a question. I'm doing it with a story. So you can still kind of hit those SEO values even in the beginning, if you want to start kind of getting that practice in, or if you're someone who's like, I'm committed to musing, actually, I'll muse till I die. That's where I'm at. And that's fantastic. You can still hit those pockets and hit those communities and deliberately gift it to someone on the internet who is wanting or needing that form of entertainment and connection. Cool. I'm just going to explain topic clusters so that I know that I don't just keep ADHD like staring at this question so that I don't forget. So topic clusters is a strategy where you essentially take the service that your website, blog, Substack, whatever it is, provides, and you give it key pillars. You can have as many pillars as you want. I recommend that you start with 3 and you really flesh them out. So if I think about what I'm really, I guess I hate the word niche, but what I'm really niching down into is like myth busting society's expectations on women. That's like that would really sum up everything I've ever written, to be honest. Within that, I could have a topic cluster that's like, what is feminism? And then what you would do is you would write an article that's like a what is kind of introductory awareness piece. And that serves as your anchor article for that topic. When I'm brainstorming this for myself, I would put that question in like a circle and then give it little lines, kind of like a little mind map-esque, right? So if I was like, what is feminism as mine? I would write that article first. And then there would be a little line coming off of it with a new little circle. And from that, I would be like, why has feminism got a bad rap, for example? And when I write that article, I would have a little bit in there that goes, don't know what feminism is? Read this article that I wrote. And link it back to that main topic cluster, right? And essentially what you want to start doing is creating this like interlinked resource that covers most questions that your person would have that you're trying to give the answers to. Does that make more sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I just need to go like deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Like it doesn't intuitively come from, okay, like wholehearted business, like let's write that down. But then what is the topic cluster? Like I feel like I just need more. And I did want to bring this up within the call because we do have the amazing AI functionality of certain programs. I use Cast Magic for my podcast, so it'll give me a transcript and then it gives me a summary. It gives me questions to explore. It even gives me the person's bio. They haven't spoken their bio into the podcast. It blows my mind, but it finds it and it gives me that. And then it'll give me things like, okay, here's a LinkedIn post, here's a newsletter post. And there is something about having a huge, big transcript summarized for those audiences that just really suits my brain. I'm like, okay, great, you know, so I take that and then obviously I make it my own. I don't just copy and paste that stuff. But I just wonder, and have you had any experience of this, Erica, around using chat GPT around going, okay, like give me like all of the, what would you say, topic clusters around this topic that my clients struggle with, or around this reader who's reading my work? Like, does it work for that? Can you find this
Yeah,
stuff out if
definitely.
you struggle to like, visualize it and articulate it?
Yeah, of course, definitely. So me and my partner, we run like a digital marketing web design company. Obviously why I'm so into SEOs. It's my job outside of Substack. We recently took on a landscaping client. This is gonna sound so dirty. I'm not a green thumb. I'm like a brown thumb. Like I will kill anything that enters. I would kill a fake plant. Like it's insane. I try really hard not to. I don't know why it doesn't work. And I'm obsessed with flowers. So it's wrong. It's wrong on all levels. Anyways, clearly I know nothing about landscaping, but I needed to be able to build out questions that people would have, like, and luckily for me, my partner's mum is like this brilliant gardener, so I'm not the target market. I would never be like Perth landscapers or whatever. But went to chat GPT, explained the services, explained like the soul of the business. Like she's a really like beautiful, kind-hearted woman who loves like very full blooming gardens that work all year round, and just went like, what are 3 topic clusters with like 5 examples of questions that this client would have? And sometimes even just seeing the examples of like the titles is super helpful, because then you go, oh, that's right. Before I was 5 years deep into this obsession, or for me, this special interest, I was Googling these things. I didn't know like these things that I know now. So it's basically like understanding those building blocks in a really intimate way. And ChatGPT, for example, can be really good with that, as long as you're then taking it and making it your own. Something that helps me is when I'm like, can you give me a prompt for that title? Like, how would I start that out? But yeah, you can absolutely use AI to help you. I love AI. I think it's great. I wish that I saw this meme the other day that was like, we're going in the wrong direction. Like we should be creating AI to do the laundry and like the other stuff that we don't love doing. And I just thought that's where I hope it goes. But I do want to disclaim that I'm not in the camp that thinks that AI is going to take over writers. Like I don't think it matters like how much code you get or how much information you get. Like there is no way to replace the writing, the heart, the connection, the like felt experience and genuine life experience that comes from good writing. So absolutely use it to prompt. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that people won't know that you've just AI'd the shit out of something, because you can read a robot. It's dry and boring, and even though they use the right sparkly words, there's just no heart. You can really feel that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's super interesting watching how it's hit the entrepreneurial space, because people have obviously very quickly understood this is going to save them a load of time. But, then seeing them sort of use that layout and then like words like blast off or like dive deep or whatever, it's like, oh yeah, that's what AI gives you. Like it becomes, as soon as you use it 1 or 2 times, you know the language that it starts to give you. And I think for me, I use it like a virtual assistant. I'm like, if I had
Yeah.
somebody working in the office with me, what would I give them to do? And that's how I use it. And it works really, really well. I know there's been some writers that have been really upset about their work being taken and fed to AI, and they didn't sign up for that. They didn't want that to happen. They don't want that to be the case. And it's like too late now. So it's a really controversial topic. And I think just in the context of this training, it's it's a virtual assistant that's going to really help you brain, yes, do all of the journaling, but it's almost like having that thesaurus that just understands the internet, because it is the internet. It's a robot, right? So it understands the internet more than we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it can be a wicked assistant in marketing. Like again, it will never like replace the ingenious stuff that happens when people in a room together. I mean, who knows? I'm not a digital AI specialist. It might replace, who knows? I don't think it will. Um, it's cut to like 10 years when it has, and there's just me talking about this. Um, But yeah, I think it's really wicked when you can brainstorm with it. I think a lot of us as writers, like we end up in a room alone. And that's why a lot of us find community in places like Substack that is across the world. Like I'm so far away from you guys, not for long. Hopefully we're moving to Spain in like 12 months. That's like closer. But AI can be, or ChatGPT can be that person to bounce those ideas off and really refine them, or at least spark something in you when you feel that like writer's block, if you are going to start writing specifically some articles for SEO.
And so on the cadence of writing, Erica, so I mean, I try and edit my website at least once a month, and I don't know where I picked that up from, but I was like, this is a good thing to do. It helps that it's also my course platform. So if I'm doing any webinars or whatever, I try and do that and then have a little tinker in there. And then obviously Substack posts, I've been publishing a lot and I'm actually pulling back on how many posts I publish simply because this was always the strategy. I always wanted to get like a good archive, places to direct people, and then I want to pour more into Creatively Conscious. And I'm still in this pace of going, is it weekly, or do I actually want to, as a writer, give myself more editing time, more time to sit with the love of the post, all that sort of stuff? And is it maybe twice a month? Like, do you have a take on that in terms of SEO and like dropping up and down any sort of like Google ranking if we slow things down in terms of the number of posts, or is it more about the search and like finding it, so almost like it being a magnet for the right type of results that someone's searching for?
Yeah, I think if for example for you, like if you were thinking of pulling back for 2 posts a month, the way to counterbalance that would be to make sure you're interlinking to those old articles so that, for example, if you have an article that's like 2 years old that's not behind a paywall, if it's like for your free stuff, or behind a paywall if you want to use that as a fun little marketing strategy, and it links to what you're writing to, make sure you're bringing that into your writing and you're like linking those things. For a lot of us, we're writing about the same thing essentially in 100 different ways. I think that happens quite naturally. So making sure that you're linking back to those older articles if you're going to slow down your newer articles, because what that will do is like make it relevant to Google again. If Google's gone, like that's not relevant anymore. If it starts getting eyes on it or clicks, it'll like help keep it alive for longer, essentially.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. That's super, super helpful. And then when we have our Substack posts and it has multiple different places that people can click out of. So I play around with different ways with this, and like it depends which way the wind's blowing to what I say to people and what strategy they're working on. But when we're holding people holistically, there might well be a few different links that we want to invite them into. There might be a subscribe to paid button. There might be an older article, a few older articles. There might be like something else outside. Where do you stand on when people sort of reference in the footnotes, lots of references like Google references or other places, and then also with the call to actions on Substack? Does any of this have like an impact on SEO? Are we safe to kind of link to multiple places? I
Yeah.
know when I check the engagement, it's always the top link that gets the most clicks on my posts, and I've said for other people to check theirs. And you can obviously be quite savvy around that. Like if you do genuinely want people to click somewhere to, you know, as a call to action, you want to sell them something or you want them to see something, you can know that that top link is going to probably be the one that most people click, and then the numbers go down. But do we need to consider any of this with SEO? What do you think?
Yeah, so there's really just like one type of thing that I would consider in that, because you're not going to get penalized for having multiple links, only if your audience is like, what is happening? I'm overwhelmed, boring, goodbye, see you later, and they come off the page. I can't remember that, it's like completely left me the technical term for this, but I call it like sneakily kind of adding your links in. So rather than being like, for this, click here, like rather than that, like if I use my feminist example of having that, what is feminist and then why has feminism got a bad rap, for example, if my first sentence mentions the word feminism, just over that word, then putting my link to my what is feminism article, right? It's like hyperlinking it rather than like having it as a big show and dance of like go here and go here and go here. And I wish I could remember the technical term, but Google loves that shit. Like Google doesn't like when you're like, click here, this one or whatever. It likes when it seamlessly integrates. So that's probably the only thing that I would say in terms of a tip for that. really you linking to other places is just going to boost their SEO. And if they're into that and they're looking at that, that's great. They might like, it might create a connection. But otherwise it shouldn't penalize you too much unless it's like insane, like the amount of like links and stuff that you've popped in there. And it's like that obvious, think like a really old website that just has like, it's basically all ads. Like that's not great. Do you know the ones I'm talking about where it's like the
Yeah.
blog is like
Yeah, and
sentences?
you
Yeah.
what you're genuinely interested. It happens a lot from Pinterest. So if I'm having a wondery sort of hour on Pinterest, I'm just like after 10 minutes of those types of pop-ups, it's like I cannot, my eyes hurt so much. Yeah, that's super, super helpful. I feel like it's worth saying at this point, whenever I've done any sort of roundup post within Substack and it's been collaboration and community focus, that's been really amazing in terms of how much further that post has gone. So even within the Substack network and maybe not related to SEO, those types of posts do really, really well. And obviously new subscribers can come in and find the work. So it is worth thinking if that's something that if you're trying to boost and think about joyful growth on Substack and you've got that in your mind in terms of adjacent collaborators or articles that you've liked linking to other people's work and being friendly with everyone. It's a really nice thing to do. There was something else that was in my mind just then. Oh, yes. And I'm going to put you on the spot here because it's not related to SEO at all, but there has been a big drop off in delivery rates on Substack. So, not open rates, delivery rates. So, they're not even getting through the spam filters, they're not getting through to people's email inboxes. There's been all sorts of issues with this. So like one of my clients is down to like 63% delivered, mine at 85% delivered. What I've tried is taking out some of the links, so less links, and then the photographs, and then obviously I'll just edit to put the photographs back in once the email's gone out. I don't know whether you've got any take on this, and I know some of this is like very recent because of Google changes and things, and I found a website where you can actually like send it into the ether and it'll tell you which filter it ends up in, and mine were all going to spam. So yeah, it just feels really sad because again, the design aesthetic, I wanted to design it the way I wanted to design it with the page breaks and the images and all that sort of way of holding people in my words. But also it feels like we're constantly having to run to catch up with like what's the next thing so that we don't, it's not an algorithm, but it still is a block to people being able to read our words. Any thoughts?
On it, I've heard about this happening in individual businesses. But in terms of Substack, like it would be like a back-end technical Substack fault. The only thing that I would say, kind of like bringing it back to SEO, because like it's so individual to each person. Like you said, like you could run it through like any different type of program that will tell you like why it's hitting spam, and it will be different for everyone if that is like a back-end technical thing that's happening with Substack. The only thing that I would kind of say is like lean into the strategies that we're talking about today to counteract when stuff like that unfortunately does go wrong. I hope that it's something that Substack addresses, because obviously that's like not great, but I only know how to fix it from a individual email. Like if it was like a Google Workspace, for example, that someone owned, I only know how to fix it from that perspective, not through Substack. So unfortunately my expertise doesn't
Yeah, no, it's all good. I just think it's just interesting, isn't it? Like being in this moment and kind of going, oh, like I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. I've asked Substack. Like it was just a bit of a, it's the chatbot, so it's AI. So he's very polite. I feel like it's a man. I don't know. It might not be. He's very polite and very helpful, but he's not always accurate. So I feel like I just get fobbed off a little bit by chatbot. But I did do a thread. And so whenever I do a thread and it's not an email, that's 98% delivered. So I'll just report on that to folks and then we'll just kind of keep chatting and stuff about it. But it's good to know. Sometimes, we can put energy in lots of different places. And actually, what you're saying is lean into this stuff because this is going to give the longevity, not just of your Substack, but of your writing, of your work outside of what your Substack ends up being for you. So there's a lot in there for us to think about around our online presence. It's super good. Thank you.
I think just like kind of expanding on that before I don't want to like take too much time at the end. It's the reason we're on Substack. It's like to make a newsletter last long. Like that's why we're choosing Substack, other than like apart from all these other incredible newsletters, like email campaigny esque type places is because Substack has that like triple threat of like your blog. It's like a blog, it's a newsletter, and it's a social media. So I feel like if we can lean into those pillars that Substack succeeds in, so that when it doesn't succeed in some other areas, we're getting traffic from different areas. We have a network that supports us that's still like boosting our stuff. And our work lives on outside of the app. So people can still come and find it, or at least be reminded that we exist. And they're like, oh, why aren't I getting that email? You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so, so much. We'll stop recording so that folks can ask some questions if they're here live. But before we do that, would you tell people what your Substack is called and where people can connect to you online if they want to connect to you outside of Substack as well?
Yeah, of course. So my Substack is called The Arcane with Erica Perry. You already heard basically what I write about, what I'm really passionate about. You'll probably see me absolutely talking to the town about my book that just got officially published at a little indie publisher and is being republished, which is like a coming of age story for young women. You could read it whenever. I think it's amazing. Humble brag. So you can find me on Substack there. I have my website, which is theericaperry.co. I am slowly returning to Instagram. Don't quote me on that, but I'm the Erica Perry there as well. If on the other hand, you wanted more help with SEO, building a website and all of that other stuff that I kind of like spoke to today, my partner and I run a company called Creative Rain Studios. We primarily like to work with artists, so like writers, singers, anyone who like makes anything. So you could be like a potter, you could be making courses. I take that as a work of art as well. So if you ever wanted to have a chat about that type of stuff, marketing wise, we specialize in what I call SOTs, which is strategies other than socials, because I feel like there's not enough talk about that sort of stuff.
I love that. I love that acronym as well. I feel like it's a real generous invitation to be like, okay, yes, there are all the places, but like let's get really strategic and let's hone into the special interest stuff. It's really cool. Thank you, Erica. So I'll stop recording there, but thanks so much to Erica for speaking to us. Obviously this will be part of a bigger post and we'll just keep exploring these topics. As I learn, I'll share it back with you. But yeah, we'll stop recording and then people can ask questions if they want to. Thanks again.